My boyfriend said, if you can't handle my friend's sharp humor, just pay your share and go. I replied, thanks for the choice. Then I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left the restaurant. I'm Ava Bennett, 29 years old, and at the exact moment I'm telling you this, I'm sitting in my truck in a dark parking lot, trying to process how a relationship that lasted 3 years ended in less than 5 minutes. The restaurant behind me is still glowing with warm yellow lights and soft jazz leaking through the glass doors. From the outside, it looks elegant, expensive, the kind of place couples celebrate promotions and anniversaries. Inside, my boyfriend Daniel Carter is probably staring at the empty chair where I used to be. Or maybe he's too busy arguing with the server about the bill. Either way, I'm not going back. Daniel and I met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's apartment warming party. He was charming in the way marketing people often are, quick with jokes, confident without looking arrogant, the kind of guy who seemed like he could talk his way into or out of anything. At the time, I was elbow deep rebuilding the transmission of a 1970 Dodge Charger in my garage. My hands smelled like motor oil most days. My work boots lived permanently by the door. I'm a plumber, and before anyone says anything, yes, it's complicated work. Pressure systems, pipe routing, structural codes. Half the time, it feels closer to engineering than people realize. Daniel found it fascinating at first. You fix the stuff that keeps the world running, he told me once. I remember smiling when he said that. Back then, it sounded like respect. Things moved quickly. After about 18 months, we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment together. The lease had both our names on it, though I paid a larger share of the rent because my plumbing contracts paid well. For the most part, life was easy. Except for one thing, Daniel's friends. He had a tight little trio from college. Clara, Sophie, James, and Rachel. They were always around. Birthdays, brunches, random Friday nights. And from the very beginning, they had opinions about me. At first, the comments were small. Little jokes about my work boots. Questions about whether plumbing required actual math. Nothing serious. Or at least that's what I kept telling myself. Daniel usually laughed it off. They're just sarcastic, he'd say afterward when I mentioned it. That's their humor. I wanted to believe that, so I let it slide. Again. And again. And again. Tonight was supposed to be different. Daniel had just been promoted to senior marketing specialist at his company. He was excited, proud, the kind of proud where his smile looked 10 years younger. I was proud of him too. So I suggested celebrating somewhere special. A fancy downtown grill known for ridiculously good steaks and cocktails that cost more than my first car payment. My treat, I'd said when we made the reservation. Daniel grinned like a kid. That was the last moment tonight felt simple. Dinner started well. The restaurant buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Soft amber lights reflected off polished wood tables. The smell of grilled meat hung in the air. We ordered drinks, shared appetizers. For the first 20 minutes, everything felt normal. Then Clara leaned forward across the table, swirling her wine glass. So, Ava, she said sweetly, still messing with pipes for a living? I smiled politely. Yeah, plumbing keeps me busy. Clara raised an eyebrow. Must be nice having such a basic job. Not much brain power needed. Sophie snorted into her drink. I kept my voice calm. Plumbing's actually pretty complex. Lots of problem solving. Oh, come on, Sophie said, waving a hand. It's not like you need a degree for it. Rachel jumped in next. Meanwhile, Daniel's climbing the corporate ladder. She gestured toward him proudly. Senior marketing specialist. That's impressive. I glanced at Daniel. He gave me a quick smile like everything was harmless. Like this was normal. The food arrived. Steaks, cocktails, truffle fries. And the comments kept coming. Rachel leaned back in her chair. So, Ava, what's your big hobby again? I restore classic cars. Oh, right, she laughed. Those rusty junk heaps. They're not junk, I said. I just finished restoring a 1969 Mustang. Sophie nearly choked laughing. How much money do you sink into those things? Clara tilted her head toward Daniel. You could do so much better. Then she added casually, remember that guy David from the marketing summit? Now he had ambition. Something cold settled in my stomach. I looked at Daniel. He just shrugged lightly like it was nothing. No defense. Not even a polite correction. The tension built slowly. Joke after joke. Each one sharper than the last. Clara said Daniel was dating down. Sophie joked that my hobbies smelled like gasoline. Rachel claimed I was lucky Daniel tolerated someone so blue-collar. By the time dessert menus arrived, the table felt like a stage, and I was the punchline. Then Sophie leaned forward and said the line that finally broke something inside me. Honestly, Daniel, when are you upgrading? She shrugged. Ava's nice, but you're executive material, and she's... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I set down my fork. Daniel, I said quietly, this isn't okay. He sighed immediately like I was the problem. Ava, they're just messing around. It doesn't feel like that, Rachel snorted. God, she's so fragile. What? Sophie laughed. Going to cry over a few jokes? I kept my voice steady. This isn't comfortable for me. Daniel looked straight at me. Then he said the sentence that ended our relationship. If you can't handle my friend's sharp humor, he said calmly, just pay your share and go. The table went silent for a second. Then Clara giggled. I nodded slowly. Thanks for the choice. I reached into my wallet, calculated my meal, added tip, placed the cash on the table. This covers mine. Daniel rolled his eyes. Ava, sit down. Don't make a scene. But I was already standing. I grabbed my keys. Enjoy your celebration. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Sophie whisper behind me, she'll be back in 10 minutes. Rachel laughed. Bet on it. I pushed open the restaurant door. Cool night air hit my face. The laughter faded behind me. For the first time in months, the silence felt good. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. Daniel, nice stunt. Come back and pay the bill. Another text. Daniel, this isn't funny. Then another. Daniel, are you serious right now? I started the engine. The check for the table was around $400. They had ordered premium steaks, cocktails, and desserts. I'd left enough to cover exactly what I owed. Daniel called 15 times on the drive home. 3 voicemails, each angrier than the last. I pulled into the parking lot of the apartment building and sat in the truck for a long moment. The thing that hurt the most wasn't the insults. It was the realization that Daniel hadn't defended me once. 3 years together, and apparently I was still the easiest person in the room to sacrifice for a joke. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I opened the message. It read, Hey Ava, this is Jamal, Rachel's boyfriend. Heard what happened tonight. Just wanted to say, you did the right thing. Also, heads up. They're all at Daniel's place right now planning some kind of payback. I stared at the message. Payback. For what? For refusing to pay their bill? I read Jamal's text 3 times before locking my phone and staring through the windshield. For a second, I almost laughed. Payback. The word sounded childish on its face. But there was nothing funny about the knot tightening in my stomach. Because Jamal didn't sound like a man exaggerating for drama. He sounded tired. Like someone who had been standing on the outside of that group long enough to know exactly what kind of people they were. I looked up at the apartment building where Daniel and I had built a whole life out of routine. Groceries on Sundays, laundry folded on the couch, my boots by the door, his laptop bag on the counter, coffee in the mornings, TV at night. Normal things. That was the part betrayal always distorts after the fact. It takes all the ordinary moments and poisons them. Makes you look back and wonder whether you were ever loved or just useful. My phone buzzed again. Daniel, are you seriously hiding in your car like a child? Then, Daniel, come upstairs. We need to settle this now. Then, Daniel, you left me with a $400 bill, Ava. Not you walked out because I humiliated you in front of my friends. Not I'm sorry I let them disrespect you. Just money. Just the bill. I let out a slow breath, put the truck in reverse, and backed out of the parking spot. I wasn't going upstairs. Not that night. I drove straight to Liam's place. Liam and I had been friends since we were 19, back when I was apprenticing, and he was doing warehouse shifts with dreams of starting his own small delivery business. He was one of those rare people who never needed to say I told you so, because his silence did it for him. He opened the door in sweatpants and an old hoodie, took one look at my face, and stepped aside without a word. I walked in carrying an overnight bag and my laptop. That bad? He asked once the door shut. I dropped the bag by the couch. He told me to pay my share and go. He frowned. Daniel said that? In front of all of them. Liam exhaled through his teeth and shook his head once. Wow. I laughed, but it came out thin and tired. Yeah, wow. He went to the kitchen, came back with a bottle of water and handed it to me. Stay here, he said, however long you need. That almost broke me more than the dinner had. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was simple, no performance, no negotiation, no condition attached. Just kindness. I sat on the edge of his couch and unscrewed the cap with fingers that had finally started trembling, now that I was somewhere safe enough to feel it. The text didn't stop. By midnight, Daniel had moved from angry to theatrical. Daniel, I can't believe you humiliated me like that. Daniel, my friends think you're a joke. Daniel, this is mortifying. Daniel, Venmo me now. The irony of that almost impressed me. His friends spend 2 hours treating me like the entertainment, and somehow I'm the one who humiliated him. A little after 1 in the morning, the others joined in. I hadn't blocked them yet, a mistake I corrected fast. Clara, you are unbelievably manipulative, offering to pay and then pulling that stunt. Sophie, you're so small-minded. No wonder you don't fit in with Daniel's world. Rachel, can you send $100? Emotional distress isn't free. That one actually made me bark out a laugh. Liam looked over from the recliner where he was pretending not to keep an eye on me. What? I turned the phone and showed him Rachel's message. He stared at it for 2 seconds, then let out one shocked laugh. No way. I know. I blocked Clara. Then Sophie. Then Rachel. I stared at Daniel's name for a beat longer, then blocked him too. The silence after that felt like stepping out of a room where an alarm had been going off for hours. I barely slept. Not because Liam's couch was uncomfortable. It wasn't. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face at the table. Calm, irritated, almost bored. If you can't handle my friend's sharp humor, just pay your share and go. It was not just what he said. It was how easy it had been for him to say it. At around 2 in the morning, I got up, padded quietly to the kitchen, and stood at the sink, drinking water in the dark. I thought about the first time Clara mocked my job to my face, and Daniel later told me not to take it personally. I thought about Rachel joking at my birthday that my dad's accent made him sound too rural for the city, and Daniel saying afterward that Rachel didn't mean it like that. I thought about my cousin's wedding last spring, when Sophie called it cute and low budget loud enough for half the table to hear, and Daniel just squeezed my knee under the table instead of correcting her. A pattern doesn't become less of a pattern just because you love the person standing in the middle of it. By dawn, I knew something in me had shifted past repair. At 8:30 the next morning, someone started pounding on Liam's front door. Not knocking. Pounding. I froze with my coffee halfway to my mouth. Liam glanced toward the door, then at me. You expecting anyone? I already knew. He set his mug down and went to answer it. I stayed out of sight, just beyond the hallway, where I could hear every word. The moment the door opened, Daniel's voice sliced through the apartment. I know she's here. Liam's tone stayed lazy and flat. Morning to you too. Her truck isn't at the apartment. So she's here. Or she parked somewhere else. Liam. Daniel lowered his voice, trying for control and not quite finding it. Can you get Ava? No. A beat. No, Liam repeated. You heard me. Daniel let out a hard breath. This is between me and my girlfriend. Doesn't look like it, Liam said. Looks like you brought a whole audience last night. I almost smiled. Then Daniel said louder, Ava, this is so immature. You can't dodge your responsibilities. Responsibilities. There it was again. I stepped toward the hallway before I could stop myself, anger rising hot and clean through the leftover hurt, but Liam caught my eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. He was right. Daniel didn't get access to me just because he showed up and demanded it. After another minute of door-side arguing and a final, tell her she's acting insane, Daniel finally left. His footsteps thundered down the porch steps. The engine of his car started. Then silence. Liam shut the door and turned around. You okay? I folded my arms. Did he really say responsibilities? He did. I laughed once, humorless. Amazing. Liam came back to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. I've been telling you for months that Daniel's friends are toxic, and he enables it. I looked down at my mug. He softened his voice. Remember your birthday? Rachel mocking your dad's accent? I nodded. And your cousin's wedding? Another nod. He never checked them, Liam said. Not once. You kept hoping he would. That one landed because it was true. I know, I said quietly. You deserve better than being the group wallet and punchline. I stared into my coffee. The phrase lodged in my chest because it named something I'd been avoiding. It wasn't just that they disrespected me. It was that they were comfortable doing it while still expecting me to pay. By 10 o'clock, the blocked calls started finding workarounds. Unknown number after unknown number. I ignored the first 3. Answered the 4th. Hello? A pause. Then Daniel's voice. He was using another phone. What do you want? I asked. We need to talk. We are talking. Not like this, in person. Come home. Home. That word scraped. I'm good where I am. He exhaled sharply. You're being absurd. Am I? Yes. Your feelings got hurt, Ava. They were joking. You embarrassed me and stuck me with the bill. There it was again. Bill first. Respect not mentioned at all. I walked to the window and looked out over Liam's parking lot. I paid for my meal, Daniel. You told us it was your treat. It was. Until your friends spent the night insulting me while you sat there smiling. I didn't think you'd actually leave. His voice carried genuine disbelief, as if my mistake had not been staying through the humiliation, but failing to play my assigned part afterward. Who does that? He demanded. Someone tired of being disrespected. He went quiet. Then his tone changed. Softer, coaxing. Babe, I'm sorry they went too far. Too far. Not wrong. Not cruel. Not humiliating. Just too far. Like there had been an acceptable amount of disrespect, and the problem was only that the dosage got messy. Come home, he said. We'll figure it out. I said nothing. Then he added, almost casually, Can you send the money for last night first? It's on my card. I closed my eyes. There was my answer. Not just for the call, for the relationship. No. Silence. Then flatter. What? No, I repeated. I'm not paying for a dinner where your friends mocked me and you told me to leave. This is crazy. No, I said. What's crazy is that you still think the issue is the check. His breath sharpened. Ava. I hung up. A minute later, a new text came through from an unknown number. I expected Daniel again. Instead, it was Jamal. Jamal. Told you they were planning something. Just heard Clara say Daniel should make you regret embarrassing him. Watch your stuff at the apartment. I stared at the message, every muscle in my body going still. Watch your stuff. That was the moment the breakup stopped feeling messy and started feeling dangerous. I looked up at Liam. He must have seen something in my face because his expression changed immediately. What happened? I held out the phone. He read it once, jaw tightening. Then he looked at me and said very quietly, "You're not going back there alone." Liam insisted on driving me back to the apartment. Not because I couldn't handle myself. I've hauled water heaters down staircases and crawled through crawl spaces most people wouldn't even look at, but because Jamal's text had changed the stakes. We pulled into the apartment complex just before noon. Daniel's car wasn't there. That was the first relief of the day. Good, Liam muttered as he parked beside the curb. Less chance of a scene. I nodded, though my stomach still felt tight. 3 years of living somewhere creates a strange emotional gravity. Even walking up the familiar concrete stairs felt different now, like the building itself knew something had broken. The hallway smelled faintly like cleaning chemicals and someone's leftover takeout. Normal. Ordinary. Nothing like the chaos I'd been expecting. But the moment I unlocked the door and pushed it open, that illusion shattered. The apartment looked like a party had exploded inside it. Wine bottles cluttered the kitchen counter. 2 pizza boxes were stacked on the coffee table. Takeout containers and plastic cups were scattered everywhere. Someone had spilled something sticky on the floor and never bothered wiping it up. Liam stepped in behind me and whistled low. Wow. I closed the door slowly. They were here last night, I said. A yellow sheet of paper taped near the door caught my eye. I walked over and peeled it off the wall. Noise complaint, building management notice. Reported Monday night, time 1:37 a.m. Complaint, excessive noise and shouting. I let out a slow breath. That's new, Liam said. Yeah. We lived here 3 years and never once gotten a complaint. I folded the paper and set it on the counter. Let's grab my stuff and go. But the moment I stepped into the living room, something felt wrong. The TV was there, the couch, the coffee table, but something small was missing. I turned slowly, scanning the room. Where's my Xbox? Liam frowned. You kept it under the TV stand, right? Yeah. We both crouched down. Empty space. For a second, my chest tightened with a different kind of anger. I walked toward the bedroom and opened the closet. And there it was. My Xbox, stuffed behind a stack of Daniel's shoes like someone had shoved it there in a hurry. I pulled it out and held it up. Found it. Liam leaned against the door frame. Why would he hide that? I set it carefully into a box. Good question. But a darker thought had already started forming. Because hiding something meant someone had been going through my things. We moved through the apartment gathering my stuff. Clothes. Laptop. A few personal tools I kept in a storage bin. Everything seemed mostly intact. Until we opened the garage. That's where the second shock hit. My tool rack was half empty. For a moment, I just stood there staring. The absence was obvious. Any plumber could tell you exactly what tools they own because we rely on them every day. And right now, several expensive ones were gone. Something wrong? Liam asked quietly. I walked closer. My Milwaukee pipe threader. Gone. My flute clamp meter. Gone. 2 specialized pipe cutters. Gone. I felt the anger rise again, this time colder. Those weren't cheap, Liam said. No. The threader alone had cost almost $300. The meter closer to $400. I pulled out my phone immediately. Opened my email. Searched purchase receipts. Still there. Proof of ownership. Then I checked marketplace listings. Craigslist. Facebook Marketplace. eBay. Something popped up that made my stomach drop. Milwaukee pipe threader. Used. $120. Posted last night. Seller name unfamiliar. But the photo. I knew that tool. There was a scratch along the side from a job 2 months ago when it slipped against a steel bracket. Same scratch. Same tool. Someone had taken a picture of it on our kitchen counter. I turned the phone toward Liam. He stared at it. Oh, hell. I opened another listing. Fluke clamp meter. $180. Same background. Same countertop. Same seller. Liam ran a hand through his hair. Daniel sold your tools? Looks like it. Then I saw something worse. A Craigslist tab still open from the search. My breath caught when I clicked it. The title read, 1969 Mustang. Project car. $2,000. OBO. must sell fast. For a moment, the world went completely quiet. Then I opened the listing. There it was. My Mustang, half restored, engine rebuilt, primer coat halfway finished. The description said, fixer-upper project car, needs work, must sell quickly. $2,000. That car was worth $6,000 now. $10,000 once finished. I stared at the screen long enough that Liam finally stepped closer. What? I turned the phone. His eyes widened. You've got to be kidding. Apparently not. The anger in my chest turned into something colder than anger. Something strategic. Because Daniel hadn't just insulted me. He'd sold my property to get his money back. Liam crossed his arms. That's illegal. Yeah, I was already dialing. Not 911. The non-emergency police line. A dispatcher answered calmly. I explained the situation. Shared apartment. Tools missing. Online listings. The officer listening asked a few questions, then said exactly what I needed to hear. Selling someone else's property can qualify as theft, even in shared living situations. Document everything. I will. Take screenshots of the listings, gather receipts, and consider filing a report. I'm doing that now. When the call ended, Liam looked at me carefully. What are you thinking? I took screenshots of every listing and saved them. Then I said quietly, I'm thinking Daniel just made a really expensive mistake. I was still photographing evidence when my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was Mr. Lee, our landlord. His message read, Ava, we need to talk about the lease. Daniel says you abandoned the apartment and wants you removed from it. Also received a noise complaint. Call me. I stared at the message for a long second, then slowly smiled. Because Daniel had just made another mistake. I tapped the call button. Mr. Lee answered after 2 rings. Ava? Hi, Mr. Lee. I just got your text. Yes. Daniel said you moved out weeks ago. I'm standing inside the apartment right now. Silence. Then a thoughtful hum. That's interesting. I leaned against the counter. I've been gone one night. Personal situation. I see. His tone changed slightly. More relaxed. I'll be honest with you, Ava. I'd rather keep you as a tenant. You've always paid rent on time. Never had problems until now. That's good to hear. But the noise complaint last night is an issue. I glanced toward the messy living room. Understood. One more complaint, and I'm obligated to start eviction procedures. Noted. We spoke for another minute. Then he added something unexpected. If you wanted the lease under your name alone, I'd consider it. I paused. What about Daniel? He'd have to agree to be removed, or you'd both break the lease. That information sat quietly in my mind. Another piece on the board. Thank you, Mr. Lee. We ended the call. Liam raised an eyebrow. Well? Daniel told the landlord I abandoned the apartment. Seriously? Yeah. And the landlord prefers me as the tenant. We finished gathering the last of my tools, the ones Daniel hadn't sold yet. I also moved the Mustang to Liam's garage later that afternoon, just to be safe. By the time I returned for the last box, the sun had started dipping toward evening. That's when Daniel finally came home. He stepped out of his car just as I loaded the final box into my truck. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the parking lot. Then he walked over, confusion turning quickly to irritation. What are you doing? I shut the truck bed, moving my stuff somewhere safe. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because you're selling it. He laughed once, short, disbelieving. I needed money for that dinner you ditched. The sentence hung in the air, and that was the exact moment the relationship ended for real. Not the restaurant, not the insults. This. You sold my tools, I said calmly. It's not stealing, he replied. We live together. What's yours is mine. Liam stepped forward, slightly behind me. I didn't even look back, because Daniel had just confirmed everything. Daniel stood there in the parking lot like nothing he'd done was unusual. Like selling my tools and listing my car online was the logical follow-up to an argument about a dinner bill. I leaned against the truck, arms folded. So you sold my tools? Daniel shrugged. I needed money. For the dinner? Yes. The way he said it, casual, certain, completely convinced he was justified, made something in my chest finally go still. Not angry. Not hurt. Just done. That wasn't your money to recover, I said. We live together, he shot back. What's yours is mine. That's not how property works, Daniel. He scoffed. Oh, please. Don't start acting like a lawyer now. You bailed on the dinner you offered to pay for. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. I held his gaze. You told me to pay my share and leave. I didn't think you'd actually do it. There it was again. That same disbelief. That same assumption that I would always absorb the damage and stay. But I did, I said. Headlights swung into the parking lot. A small white sedan pulled up behind his car. Clara. She stepped out with the same confident stride she always had. Sunglasses perched on her head like she was arriving at brunch instead of a breakup scene. Well, well, she said, spotting me immediately. Still causing drama? Liam muttered under his breath. Charming. Clara walked up beside Daniel and crossed her arms. Ava, you owe Daniel $400. I let out a small laugh. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I repeated. I paid my share when I was told to leave. Daniel rubbed his forehead like this whole conversation was exhausting him. You said it was your treat. And I meant it, I said, until your friends spent 2 hours insulting me while you laughed along. Clara rolled her eyes. Oh my God, she's still whining about that? I turned to her slowly. You mocked my job. You fix toilets, she said flatly. I build plumbing systems that keep buildings functioning. Same thing. Liam stepped forward slightly. Actually, it's not. Clara ignored him. Daniel, I told you she'd make this dramatic. Daniel looked between us, frustration tightening his expression. This is ridiculous, he said. We're throwing away 3 years over a stupid dinner. That sentence hit something deeper than the insults had, because it proved he still didn't understand what had happened. It's not one dinner, I said quietly. It's 3 years. Daniel frowned. What does that even mean? It means 3 years of your friends disrespecting me while you stayed silent. Clara snorted. Blue-collar people always have brittle egos. I actually laughed. Not sarcastically. A real laugh. My ego's fine, I said. My boundaries just finally clicked. Then I picked up the final box and placed it in the truck bed. Daniel's expression shifted. Something uneasy flickered there for the first time. You're seriously leaving? Yes. You're throwing away 3 years. I shut the truck door. No, I said. You did. The words landed heavier than anything else I'd said. Clara scoffed loudly. Daniel, she'll cool off. They always do. But Daniel wasn't looking at Clara anymore. He was looking at the boxes in my truck. Then at the empty space in the garage where my Mustang had been earlier that morning. Where's the car? He asked suddenly. Safe. His eyes narrowed. You moved it? Yes. You're being paranoid. No, I said. I'm protecting my property. Clara laughed again. Oh, please, like Daniel would actually steal your junk car. I didn't bother correcting her about the value. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. You're really reporting this? He asked. The tools? Yes. I held his gaze. Yes. He ran a hand through his hair. You're going to call the police over a misunderstanding? It's not a misunderstanding. Daniel, I said calmly, you listed my car online for $2,000. That finally shut him up. Clara blinked. You did what? Daniel looked annoyed. I needed leverage. With her car? She owes me money. Clara shook her head like the logic was obvious. Honestly, just pay him and move on. I stared at her. Do you hear yourself? Yes. You think I owe money for a dinner where you insulted me the entire time? That's not the point, Clara said. That's exactly the point. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly. Ava, let's talk privately. I didn't move. Everything's already public. He looked uncomfortable. Just come upstairs. No. Why not? Because you sold my tools. He hesitated. And because, I added, you told the landlord I abandoned the apartment. That got his attention. What? I spoke with Mr. Lee. Daniel's face shifted. You called him? He texted me. Clara frowned. Wait, what? Daniel looked irritated now. He doesn't need to be involved. He already is. What did you say to him? The truth. For the first time since we started dating, Daniel looked unsure of himself. Clara tried to break the moment. Daniel, this is stupid. She's bluffing. I shook my head. I'm not. I climbed into the driver's seat. Daniel stepped closer quickly. Ava, wait. I rolled down the window slightly. What? He hesitated. For a brief second, he looked almost nervous. Then he said something that proved nothing had changed. You don't have to do all this. Do what? Be so harsh. Harsh. I stared at him. You let your friends humiliate me for years. He shifted uncomfortably. They didn't mean... I held up a hand. Don't! He stopped talking. Because we both knew the sentence he was about to say. They didn't mean it. The same excuse. Every time. I started the engine. Daniel rested his hand on the door frame. Ava, come home. I shook my head. This was home, I said quietly. Then I looked him directly in the eyes. Until you decided I was easier to lose than your friends. For a moment he didn't move. Then Clara spoke from behind him. She'll be back. I smiled faintly. No. Then I drove away. The next morning I filed the police report. Not because I wanted revenge, because by that point Daniel had crossed from disrespect into actual theft, and ignoring it would only make things worse. I brought everything with me. Screenshots of the eBay listings, the Craigslist ad for my Mustang, receipts showing exactly when I purchased the tools. The officer reviewing the report barely needed 5 minutes to understand the situation. You have proof these are yours? He asked. I handed him the printed receipts. Yes, he nodded. And he sold them without permission? Yes. Then this qualifies as theft, he said calmly. The word landed heavier than I expected. Theft. 3 years of a relationship, reduced to a criminal report across a metal desk. What happens next? I asked. We'll contact him, and the buyers if necessary. Selling stolen property leaves a trail. That last sentence gave me a strange sense of closure. Daniel had always believed problems disappeared if he ignored them long enough. But digital marketplaces don't forget. Later that afternoon, I met Mr. Lee, our landlord. He ran the apartment building like a quiet, patient accountant. Polite but firm, the kind of person who valued stability more than drama, which meant Daniel had already annoyed him. Mr. Lee greeted me at the office door. Ava, he said, come in. His office smelled faintly of tea and old paperwork. He gestured for me to sit. I spoke with Daniel yesterday, he began carefully. I figured. He said you abandoned the apartment. I shook my head. I moved some things after an argument. I never abandoned it. Mr. Lee nodded slowly. That aligns with what I suspected. He folded his hands. You've been a good tenant, rent always on time, no complaints. I appreciated the quiet support. Thank you. However, he continued, there have now been multiple noise complaints. That caught my attention. More than one? Yes. My stomach sank slightly. Daniel's friend gatherings had apparently continued after I left. Loud arguments, music, shouting. Neighbors had finally had enough. Mr. Lee slid a paper across the desk. Under the lease agreement, this allows me to issue a cure or quit notice. I read the document. Daniel had 3 days to correct the violations or face eviction proceedings. Does he know about this yet? I asked. I delivered the notice this morning. I leaned back in the chair. For the first time since the dinner, I felt something close to relief. Daniel had believed he had leverage over me. But the reality was the opposite. Without my portion of the rent, and with complaints stacking up, the apartment was becoming a liability. Mr. Lee looked at me carefully. If you wanted to take over the lease yourself, I'd still consider that option. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, I'm moving on. He nodded approvingly. Probably wise. The dominoes started falling that same week. I didn't cause it. I didn't need to. When toxic groups collapse, they usually do the job themselves. The first domino came from Jamal. He texted me one evening while I was in Liam's garage working on the Mustang. Thought you should know. Rachel and I are done. I wiped grease from my hands and called him. You okay? I asked when he answered. He let out a tired laugh. Honestly, yeah. What happened? She kept trashing me to Daniel's group. Said I was a temporary guy until someone better came along. That sounded exactly like Rachel. What made you finally leave? I read the messages she sent about you, Jamal said, bragging about how you'd fold and pay the bill eventually. A pause. Figured if that's how she treats people she dates, I should get out now. I understood that feeling better than anyone. Well, I said, good call. The second domino fell 2 days later. According to Jamal, Sophie's boyfriend found the messages she had sent demanding money from me. That conversation did not go well. The third domino hit Clara. And this one had nothing to do with the dinner. Clara had a habit of complaining about coworkers on social media. Apparently one of those posts finally reached HR. Jamal texted the update with a single line. Clara got fired today. I stared at the message for a moment before showing Liam. He read it and shook his head slowly. That group is imploding. Yeah. Funny how that happens once the punching bag leaves. He wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, Daniel's situation was getting worse. The police contacted him about the tool sales. 2 of the buyers had already been identified. The listings were removed, and Daniel had to explain exactly why he was selling tools he didn't own. At the same time, the lease notice from Mr. Lee forced another uncomfortable conversation. Daniel suddenly wanted to negotiate. He called, left several messages. I didn't answer. Eventually, he texted, "We need to talk about the lease." I replied once, "Talk to Mr. Lee." He didn't like that answer. The most ironic twist came a few days later. Rachel tried to move into Daniel's apartment after Jamal kicked her out. But the lease notice explicitly banned unauthorized occupants until the violations were resolved, which meant Rachel couldn't stay. So the friend group that had spent years acting untouchable was now fighting over couches. Jamal summarized it perfectly in one text. Turns out people who treat everyone like backups eventually run out of places to land. By the end of the week, my life looked completely different. I had found a small one-bedroom apartment closer to work. The rent was cheaper, the commute shorter. And most importantly, there was peace. No sarcastic dinner conversations. No judgmental friend group. Just quiet evenings, the smell of motor oil in the garage, and the steady rhythm of rebuilding my Mustang. One afternoon, Liam walked into the garage while I was tightening a bolt under the hood. You know, he said, leaning against the wall. Daniel tried to call me yesterday. I slid out from under the car. What did he want? Asked if you were still staying here. And? I told him you moved on. I wiped my hands with a rag. Good answer. Liam nodded toward the Mustang. You almost done with that thing? Spring car show, I said. That's the goal. He grinned. Not a bad way to celebrate freedom. By the time spring arrived, the entire situation felt like a strange story that had happened to someone else. Not because it was distant, but because life had moved forward faster than I expected once I stopped dragging the weight of that relationship behind me. My new apartment was small, but it had exactly what I needed. One bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a parking space just large enough for my truck and the Mustang. The first night I slept there, the silence felt unfamiliar. No sarcastic comments from the living room. No late-night phone calls from Daniel's friends planning another dinner. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts again. And after a while, that quiet started to feel like freedom. Work picked up too. Plumbing has a funny way of rewarding consistency. If you show up, do the job right, and don't cut corners, word spreads. Within a few weeks, I had more side work than I could comfortably schedule. A restaurant renovation, 2 residential pipe replacements, and 1 commercial building project that paid more than Daniel's entire dinner had cost 10 times over. Every evening after work, I went straight to the garage. The Mustang was almost finished. Fresh paint, rebuilt engine, interior restored piece by piece. The project that Rachel had mocked as a junk heap was now worth close to $10,000. Funny how that works. People who don't understand something often assume it has no value. One Friday afternoon, Liam dropped by with coffee. He leaned against the garage wall, watching me tighten the final bolt under the hood. "So," he said casually, "guess who I ran into yesterday?" "Who?" "Daniel." That name felt oddly neutral now, like hearing about someone I used to know in high school. "How'd he look?" "Tired," Liam said, "stressed." I wiped my hands with a rag. "Lee's situation?" "Yeah." Apparently, Mr. Lee had followed through with the notice. The complaints had been enough to trigger serious consequences. Daniel had tried to fight it at first. But when the police report about the tools appeared at the same time, his negotiating position collapsed. Eventually, he agreed to be removed from the lease entirely. The apartment stayed under Mr. Lee's control. Daniel moved out. "Where'd he go?" I asked. "Back to his parents' place." That image lingered for a moment. The man who once loved lecturing me about ambition, now living in his childhood bedroom again. Life has a way of balancing itself. The friend group didn't survive the fallout either. Without Jamal covering part of Rachel's rent, her apartment became unaffordable. She tried staying with Sophie. That lasted exactly 3 weeks before they started blaming each other for the entire situation. Clara's job loss made things worse. Without steady income, she couldn't maintain the lifestyle she'd always bragged about. Jamal summed it up perfectly when he texted one afternoon. "Rachel says Daniel ruined everything. Sophie says Clara started the drama. Clara says they're all ungrateful." He added one final message. Group chat exploded last night. I laughed out loud reading it, not because their lives had fallen apart, but because the dynamic had finally turned inward. When a group spends years bonding over tearing someone else down, eventually they run out of targets, and then they start turning on each other. A week later, I ran into Jamal in person at a dive bar near the auto shop district. He recognized my truck outside and waved me over. We ended up sitting at the bar sharing a beer and swapping stories. "Crazy how fast everything collapsed," he said. "Yeah." He took a sip and shook his head. "You know Rachel used to tell everyone you were lucky Daniel tolerated you?" I smirked slightly. "I heard." "Funny thing," Jamal added. "She said the same thing about me." That made me laugh. 2 people they had looked down on, both treated like placeholders by people convinced they were settling. "Guess we both escaped," I said. "Yeah," he agreed. "Whole ambush." He glanced at my hands. "You still working on that car?" "Finished it last week." "No kidding?" "Car show this weekend." His face lit up. "I'm there." The night before the show, my phone buzzed with a message I hadn't seen in weeks. "Daniel." I stared at the name for a long moment before opening it. "I heard the Mustang is finished." Another message appeared. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Then, "I see now how toxic my friends were." I leaned back in the chair. Some realizations arrived too late to matter. His next message confirmed it. "I should have defended you." For a moment, I felt a small flicker of the old sadness. 3 years is a long time to share a life with someone. But the message that followed erased any doubt. "Any chance we could try again?" I stared at the screen. Outside, the Mustang sat in the driveway under the garage light. Restored, stronger than when I first bought it. Some things break and get rebuilt. Others break and reveal they were never built to last. I locked the phone without replying. The next morning, the car show was packed. Rows of polished classics. Engines gleaming in the sunlight. People walking slowly between them like museum visitors. When I pulled the Mustang into its spot, a small crowd gathered almost immediately. "Beautiful restoration," someone said. "Did you do the work yourself?" "Every bolt," I replied. Jamal showed up an hour later. Liam arrived soon after. At one point, we stood there looking at the car together while the sun reflected off the chrome. "Man," Liam said quietly, "your dad was right." "About what?" "That car was worth finishing." I smiled slightly. My dad called yesterday, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He'd said something simple, something that stuck with me. You sound happier than you have in years. Standing there beside the car, surrounded by people who actually respected me, I realized he was right. Not because the drama was over, not because Daniel's life had unraveled, but because I had finally stopped carrying people who treated me like an ATM and a punchline. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to stay where you're not valued. They wanted me to pay, and in a strange way, they're paying now. Just not how they planned.